Welcome to the Untold Story. I'm your host, Steve Gavrilos. Next to me, I have two Canadian basketball legends. On my right here, I have Mr. Rob Samuels. Welcome, Rob.
Thank you, Steve. It's great to be here.
And on the far right, we have Mr. Michael Brkovich. Mike, how are you doing? Welcome.
It's great to be here. It's an honor to be here to share my story with you and Rob. So I look forward to the next few hours.
So thank you very much, guys. So how are you guys doing? How are you doing, Rob?
I'm doing great, Steve. I'm really excited to be here today and looking forward to getting to know Mike Brkovich a little bit. I remember Mike from high school. I watched him play in college, but never really had a chance to talk to him and get to know him. So I'm really excited about hearing his story today, and I think his story is going to be great.
Excellent, and thank you for coming down from Toronto to be on the podcast. Mike, welcome. It's a fantastic weekend for us to have this, I think. It's a special weekend for yourself. NCAA Final Four weekend. It has a lot of meaning for you. Tomorrow's the championship game. Of course, we're going to go back 45 years today to talk about your untold story, even further, but NCAA basketball is very popular right now. We have a Canadian playing in the championship. It's great stuff, so happy to have you here.
Well, I'm happy to be here to share my story, and like we discussed earlier, 45 years, a blink of an eye. We're in our 60s. It's gone by very quickly.
So before we get to your story, Mike, first of all, I want to turn it over to Rob for a few words and also to tell us, what is the Untold Story podcast all about? Rob?
So, Mike, Untold Story, each and every one of us have something unique in that our stories are so different. Our life stories are unique to us. And when we tell our story, believe it or not, there's somebody out there, when they hear your story, there are things that resonate with them. There are things that will change their destiny. And sometimes we undervalue the power of our story. So we're telling stories that we believe will really have an impact when it lands out there. Not only that, when we tell that story, there's a reflection that takes place. And we realize, wow, I've been really blessed. I've had this great journey. Yeah. And so telling your story has value for you and also for the people hearing it. And that's what the Untold Story podcast is all about. So really, thank you for coming to share your story. It's a gift that you're going to give to those who are listening. Right. And that's something that we all can give to the world, our story.
Thank you, Rob. Now, Mike, before we get started, we have to give you an official introduction. So are you ready?
All right.
Welcome to the fans in attendance here and the millions of fans around the world. Basketball fans, are you ready? Starting at guard for the Michigan State Spartans, a 6'4" sophomore from W.D. Lowe High School in Windsor, Ontario, wearing green and white, number 12, the Golden Arm, Michael Brkovich. Hi, Mike.
Steve, quite an introduction.
Yes. So we have a list of your accomplishments and accolades. I'd like to read some off for our listeners to know. You're an OFSA back-to-back boys basketball champion in 76-77. You were the first team All-City in those same years. You got a full-ride scholarship to Michigan State University. You were the starting guard on the 1979 MSU team, playing next to Magic Johnson, and you won the NCAA Championship in 1979. You were the co-captain of the Spartan team in 1980-81. You graduated from MSU with a degree in social science and labor relations. You represented Canada at the Pan Am Games in Puerto Rico in 1979. You would have been an Olympian if Canada had not boycotted the 1980 Games in Moscow. You were drafted by the Milwaukee Bucks of the NBA in 1981. You played professionally for the Milwaukee Flyers that 1981-82 season. You received a Bachelor's of Education degree from the University of Windsor. You became a real estate developer here in the historic Walkerville area of Windsor, and you're the owner of Walkerville Brewing, which is where we're recording our podcast today. But accolades and accomplishments don't tell us the whole story of Mr. Mike Brkovich, the person behind the myth and the legend of the Golden Arm. That's why Rob and I are so excited to have this discussion with you today, to bring your amazing and untold story to the world. Just to set up the format of today's podcast, we decided to separate it into two halves, like an NCAA basketball game. The first half will be about your life during basketball. The second half will be about your life after basketball. And the rules are simple. If we ask you questions you don't like, you can call a foul on us, or you can tell us we're out of bounds. If we really cross the line, you can call a technical on us or call a timeout. But Mike, we just want to make you feel comfortable.
Sure.
So that we can truly uncover your untold story.
Sure.
So let's tip off the game about your life. Tell us about your childhood, your family life, and your Serbian roots, and how they've influenced your identity and your journey.
Great question. I think I was born and raised not too far from this location right here in Walkerville, where I first started attending F.W. Begley Elementary School. My mom and dad were immigrants from the former Yugoslavia, and I think what really kept us grounded those first years as a young boy, a young man, was our church. We did a lot of summer activities. They had a great basketball program that we played alongside other Orthodox churches, which you're familiar with, the Greek churches and a few other churches, the Russian churches. And eventually my parents saved up enough to move us to downtown Windsor, where I went to Dougal Avenue Public School. Right around grade 2 or 3 is when I moved. And then eventually ended up at W.D. Lowe, where I was fortunate enough to win 2 city championships. And during that journey, I always tell people, you need a strong base, and that starts with your mom and dad. But I had 2 great brothers and a lot of amazing teachers. You know, we gravitated to the YMCA as young kids do, but again, I can't stress enough how much our church and how much teachers influenced my life at that young age.
Yeah, you mentioned that you played in the Serbian Orthodox Basketball League.
Yes.
Did you guys play here in Windsor, or did you just primarily play in Detroit?
Well, that started at a young age because for some reason, today's NBA, there's a lot of great Serbian players, but we had a church league in Detroit that we would go every Sunday after church service. You had to go to church service to play. so our parents, hey, we had to go to church, and then we ended up playing in this Orthodox Youth League, the OYA, in Detroit, which comprised of 6 or 7 churches. So we did that from probably when we were 13 or 14 all the way up until we got out of university. They had a senior men's league there. We participated until we were in our 40s with the same group of guys that we kind of grew up with in church, that you've made lifelong friends with. And we go back every year. Once a year they have this tournament, and also the Greek tournament we go to sometimes. So, I mean, it all started at church, I'd have to say.
That's where your basketball skills developed?
Yes.
Through the church league?
Yep.
Very nice. Tell us a little bit about your family dynamics. You had your parents and your 2 brothers. When were you born, first of all?
1958. So I grew up during the 60s and early 70s, which was a different period here in Windsor.
What day were you born on?
April the 6th, yesterday.
April the 6th. Happy birthday,
Yes.
Mike.
Yeah, happy birthday, Mike.
Wish you 100 years of health and more.
And more, for sure. Yeah, grew up. As most immigrants, my parents worked hard. And like most immigrants, it was difficult on immigrants, I think, in the 60s and 70s. What I gained from watching my parents was their work ethic, their deep religious roots, taking care of their kids, a community. Our church was a community. So I think sometimes we undervalue those things in our life, and we don't realize how influential they were until you get older. You don't realize those things as a 12, 13, 14, 15-year-old. So I think a lot of the values my parents instilled in me were hard work, humility, trying to help others. Those were all good hallmarks
Very good,
that I took from my parents.
Which community were your parents part of? Were you part of the St. Dimitri Church, or were you part of the Gračanica?
Gračanica was our church, but we had friends in Sveti Dimitrija too. So there's 3 Serbian churches in Windsor now, and there's 4 churches in Detroit, Serbian churches. So again, we all had choir festivals, summer camps, basketball tournaments. So our life as young kids really evolved around our church.
Rob?
So Mike, you went on to play at a pretty high level, collegiate, professionally as well. You know, I know that back in elementary school and high school, you were just having fun. You were just having a good time, like everybody at that stage.
Oh yeah.
You've had a chance now to look back. What do you think was significant about those years that propelled you to the level that you ended up playing at?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I always say my parents couldn't afford to put us in hockey, so the natural out was either basketball or baseball. So I think geography played a role. We were in downtown Windsor. We were in the public housing part of downtown Windsor. Where we started playing basketball at the YMCA, we came in contact with a lot of Americans that were coming over to Windsor and hanging around this, I call it subsidized housing here by the Windsor Arena. That's probably when I was 13 or 14. So a lot of great players would come in there from Detroit. We started playing. Not that we didn't play Little League baseball and football, but I think basketball, for some reason, we loved the Pistons. We watched the Lakers with Jerry West and Wilt Chamberlain. Once we got the bug in church, then all of a sudden we started we started to get good, right, as a 13 or a 14 or a 15-year-old. And so then it kind of fed off of, okay, we're going to work hard. I think our high school coach, Dave McGuffin and Jerry Brumpton, really took an interest in us, a keen interest, you know. But I would say it was geography. We were in downtown Windsor. The courts were there. Didn't cost a lot to play basketball. All you needed was a basketball and a pair of shoes. Great players around us. We would play year-round. In the winter, outside. We would play in the summers. Had a great group of friends that I still keep in contact with, that I grew up with still to this day. So I think that's what really started that interest at that age.
So you won back-to-back OFSA championships at WD Lowe. Tell us about that.
Actually, we should have actually won 3. My grade 11 year, we lost at the last second. But we were blessed. Windsor had great high school basketball, like both of you two would know. Herman was good, Kennedy was good, Riverside was good, Assumption was good, Brennan was good. That league prepared us, I think, and made it a lot easier when we went to OFSA. So we won back-to-back, 3 city championships, 2 provincial championships. And I give a lot of credit to Coach Brumpton preparing us and spending all those hours off-season with us in the gym, in the summers, in the spring, in the fall, you know, letting us into the gym and spending time with us like a great, passionate educator and coach would do.
I remember when I was in grade 9, and it's the first time I ever saw you play at the championship game at St. Denis Hall. It was just a packed gym. I was up on probably the highest seats possible. And before that game, Walkerville had played Assumption, and my friend Eli Miotis, who's a Serbian friend of ours as well. And so I couldn't really see you because there's so many people. You were just shooting from so far away, and there was no three-point line.
There's no three-point line.
And you were just like, you know, making so many bombs. Like, it was unbelievable. It was so exciting in there. And you had a bunch of players on there. I remember a guy named Dan Borelli.
Yeah.
Who else was on the team? Was it Rick Wells was on your team?
Richard Wells, Kenny Smith, Bradley Smith, my brother.
Of course, your brother, yeah.
Yeah, we had Jimmy Branoff, who you know who ended up being my lawyer my entire life.
Was he on that team as well?
He was on 2 of those teams, yeah. So we had a great group of guys, and we still keep in contact with each other today.
Excellent. That's basically the answer to your question, Rob, is what prepared him. You know, you were just playing basketball all the time. You mentioned the YMCA. I remember I used to go play at the Y when I was in grade 8, and a couple of friends of ours, Jamie Lengel and John Harden, you probably know them.
Very well.
John's mom was the director, I guess, of the Y. And Jamie told me stories about how you guys used to play there in that old gym.
Oh, in the old gym.
In grade 6 and 7.
We would have our neighbor, Mr. Lasko, the Y would close at 8 or 9, and he would be working their afternoon shift. So we would go and knock on the door, and he would let us in the gym, you know, after 8 o'clock in the summer or 7 o'clock. And then he said, now you guys make sure you lock the door behind you. And he was great. He used to walk by our house. It was a neighborhood.
Yeah.
So, and my mother would laugh because she said, now, oh, you know, the guys who run the gym, and we would get in that gym. We would play, we would actually invite other guys. So we had games in there and we shouldn't have been in there. But no, that started at a young age.
That's part of the legend that I heard about you, is that you and your brother were always, you had the key to the gym.
Oh yeah,
and
we
you played
did.
there till all hours of the night. I don't know how many hours you played till.
We would play a lot, and even our high school coach, Mr. Brumpton, in the summer would open the gym. He would open it up during the weekends. I mean, we would go to the University of Windsor and play. We would take buses to St. Clair. I mean, we would be constantly trying to find games. We'd be going to Detroit when we shouldn't have probably been in Detroit at that age, because guys would pick us up. I still remember we would play at the downtown, behind the arena. There was a great court, and all these guys, one guy in particular, Dennis Smith, he was a great player. He would put us in his car and drive us over in Detroit when you didn't need ID to get across the border. Like the early 70s, you didn't need anything, right? So he would take us over to Southwest Detroit. You know, he was a mentor to us. He was a great player. So he would take us over there and then bring us back in 3 or 4 hours. I'm not so sure our parents would want us over there, but they didn't have any idea. But somehow it all worked out. Anything that you're passionate about, it's the 10,000-hour rule. You know yourself from being a great player. You can't be a great player by only playing a couple of hours a day. You have to be passionate about it and be willing to do the work.
And that's a great message, Mike, just to follow your passion and to just immerse yourself in whatever it is that you're passionate about. And it's pretty clear that you were passionate about basketball from the start.
Yeah.
And that's what pushed you towards your success.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it was, unfortunately, at that time, people from Windsor or Ontario were not getting recruited. So we didn't have all those great coaching clinics that they do have now. We didn't have the mechanism or the infrastructure in place where they would have all these developmental leagues and so on. So I was fortunate that I had coaches around me that were passionate and wanted to spend time with kids.
I read the story about how you got recruited or how you got the scholarship at Michigan State. Can you explain how that happened?
Well, I was getting recruited in high school, and I was making a few visits, and then two local guys, Ron Gardner and the same Dennis Smith, called Coach Heathcote and just said, there's a guy down here in Windsor that we think could play at your level, at the Big Ten level. And Michigan State was not recruiting me, hadn't even heard about me. The week before, Ray Scott, who was at Eastern Michigan University, Ron Gardner had called Ray Scott, and I went out there and played at Eastern Michigan, and Ray Scott, who used to coach the Pistons, said, you know what, I want you to go to junior college because I don't have any scholarships to offer you. And the same thing at UAD, I had gone to play against the UAD guys, and they didn't have scholarships because it was actually late May or early June, and all of the scholarships, usually they got the signings done back then in March. So fortunately, Michigan State had a player become ineligible and left. So Ron Gardner and Dennis had called Coach Heathcote, and it's a great story, how timing, you and I were talking about timing, and sometimes it's predestined by someone else where you're going, but the coach had said, well, you know, I just signed Earvin Johnson, that's probably one of the best players in the country. I signed Jay Vincent, who's a top 5 pick. I got a 7-footer from Sweden. I got 2 all-state players from Catholic Central, and Mike plays center in high school. But you know what, bring him up. Bring him up and let him scrimmage against the guys. I went up there, and here I am playing against Magic Johnson, who I'd never seen play before. I'd never seen Greg Kelser play before, who was a great player. And on that same floor, it was like in June, there were some NBA players. There was Terry Furlow, who was a great player. There were a few other NBA players that were from the Detroit area that would go up there and play on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So this was a Thursday, and one of the managers of Michigan State, a guy named Darwin Payton, knew me from E-Course where I used to play, and he said, Mike, oh, I know, Coach, I know Mike. I've known Mike for years. And so I played that Thursday, and I played well, but I didn't think I played well enough. And the coach said to me after the game, he said, listen, you work hard, you're a good high school player, but you've never played guard. You're gonna have to play guard if you come to Michigan State. You play center in high school. I mean, you're gonna have to play JV, even if I even considered you. But you know what, why don't you come back Tuesday? Come back Tuesday.
This is Judd Heathcote talking.
Judd Heathcote talking, and Don Munson, his assistant coach, he said, come back Tuesday, because at that time, though, I was kind of overwhelmed, right? Because I had not playing against many NBA players that were good players, and when you saw Earvin Johnson for the first time, you went, oh, this guy's 6'8", and he's a point guard, and he had a body, like he had a pro body on him as a young kid. Jay Vincent was good, Greg Kelser was good. There was a guy named Bobby Chapman who played at Michigan State that was an All-American. So I came back that Tuesday, and I played great, played really well. The coach basically said, listen, I'm gonna take a risk, I'm gonna gamble on you. All of my assistants, they don't know if I should sign you because we're now giving up a scholarship for 4 years, but I think I can make a player out of you, but you're gonna have to play maybe JV for a year or two. Can you transition to a guard? I don't know. And I had really played good that Tuesday morning, so he basically signed me the next day.
Wow.
Came to Windsor, met my parents. Mr. Brumpton was with me. It helped a lot that Darwin knew me, and it helped that I played well that day. If I wouldn't have played well, I don't think I would have ever gotten a scholarship.
What was the highlight of that day you played so well?
I dunked on one of their really good players, Greg Kelser, and so people still remind me of that were around that day. They said, here's this guy, a guy with long hair, skinny white kid from Windsor, dunking on Greg, who was a great player. And I really, since then, really, I was lucky. And again, I call it luck because if Ron Gardner wouldn't have called up Coach Heathcote, if there wasn't a scholarship available, if the week before, I mean, I didn't want to leave and go to Tennessee or these other schools that were recruiting me. So I would have maybe went to Eastern Michigan, maybe, I don't know. It all fit into this puzzle, and then probably a year or two after that, I'm starting for a national championship, playing the whole game, playing against Larry Bird. I was very, very fortunate.
Yeah, well,
But Mike, all those years of spending time in the gym, going to Detroit, all of that was preparation. So, you know, what I hear in your story is that you're already being prepared for that. You know, that time when you went over there and you played well. You've been working hard before that. It's not just luck. Right?
No, it wasn't. Again, I had to work hard because I wasn't maybe as athletic as the players at that level, right? So I had to work hard. I had to practice shooting. I had to practice free throw shooting. If they wanted me to become a better ball handler, I had to work on my ball handling. And again, it wasn't that I liked hard work. If you told me what to do, I would work hard. So you're right. I wouldn't have been there unless I wasn't working hard. And in a basketball world, Detroit and Windsor are kind of linked now, today. They weren't as much then, but there were a lot of players I played against, my brother Donnie and I. Like I said, growing up, we were going to Detroit all the time when people were even afraid to go to Detroit. So we had friends that we had made, and Darwin had become like a friend because he was downriver near River Rouge E-Course in southwest Detroit. And I had played in these tournaments when I was 16 or 17. So again, that was luck too. He was the manager of Michigan State at that time. What are the chances, right?
stars aligned for you. It's like the universe conspired for this to happen.
Exactly.
Like Rob said, you worked hard, and obviously you could have gone somewhere else, but it just worked out that way for you.
Oh, absolutely.
So, Mike, you were the first Canadian to start and win in the NCAA Division I championship game back in 1979. I know that was 45 years ago. So we prepared a little video to help you remember some of those memories.
The Spartans were led by two of the most dazzling performers ever to take the court for MSU. Senior Gregory Special K. Kelser, a gravity-defying slam dunker, and sophomore guard Earvin Magic Johnson, the most electric player in college basketball. They were joined by sophomore forward Jay Vincent, junior guard Terry Donnelly, junior forward Ron Charles, sophomore forward Mike Brkovich, and the rest of the Spartan squad.
Toward the baseline, slapped away there by Kelser on a fine defensive play. Kelser loops the pass down.
Mike Brkovich's first slammer of the season was the capper, as MSU blew Indiana right out of Jenison, 82-58. Sophomore forward Mike Brkovich was the man of the hour as he sank 2 free throws at the end of regulation time to give the Spartans new life.
Ball game is tied, 65-all. We're going into overtime here at Jenison Fieldhouse. Iowa having trouble with the offense here in the overtime. Missed on the free throw. Brkovich is going to get the steal here on the side. A pass to Greg Lloyd, who's now in the ball game, former Lansing Eastern star here in town. And Greg has himself a couple of points. Very key points in this ball game, critical here in the overtime. Earvin Johnson on the sideline gets the steal.
Magic scored 25, Kelser 22, and the Spartans won it in overtime, 83-72.
The complete ball player for Michigan State. Kansas having trouble with that Michigan State 3-2 zone. Other coaches watching that 3-2. It's a zone, but Judd uses man-to-man concepts, as you can see. Donnelly and Brkovich have to play it real tough out at the top. That's exactly what they're doing. In fact, Brkovich gets a touch of the ball over to Vincent. Down to Brkovich. Brkovich, top of the key. He's going all the way. Bowls over the Kansas player. He goes in for the dunk and the 2 points. Mike Brkovich. Oh, Earvin Johnson loved that one. Look at the camaraderie on this ball club.
Magic's 11 assists sparked the Spartans, prompting Al McGuire to say he's the best passer in college ball I've ever seen.
Brkovich on the side. Golden arm. Lets it fly. He's got it. Mike Brkovich.
Market Square Arena, Indianapolis, Indiana. This will be the site of the NCAA Championship next year. Today, the regional finals of the Mideast and 17,000 strong, jammed to the rafters and color them green. Green for Michigan State, ranked by the coaches number 4 in the nation. Green for Notre Dame, rated 5th in the nation. Both teams at one time or another ranked number 1 in the country during the whole throughout the season. Hello, everyone. I'm Dick Enberg. Welcome to Indianapolis, Indiana.
For Michigan State, number 12 at forward, a 6'4" sophomore from Windsor, Ontario, Michael Brkovich. For Notre Dame, number 30.
Michigan State first on the court in their green, and in the light green, Notre Dame. It'll be Orlando Woolridge jumping for the Irish, although Lane Beer is the center, and Greg Kelser jumps for Michigan State.
Notre Dame usually tries to back tap. Watch Woolridge try to get it to Tapuka.
This crowd of over 17,000 split right down the middle. You're going to hear a lot of noise. Oh, what a play! And Brkovich!
Hard-fought contest, but the surging green wave from East Lansing had other ideas.
Opening tip-off. Oh, Kelser to Johnson to Brkovich. Oh, Spartans.
Rebound, Kelser. He has 3 in a row. Donnelly breaks out 2-on-2. That was almost over and back. Brkovich. They call him the golden arm, and Michigan State leads 6-2.
Jake is trying to keep him off balance.
We have an All-American first-team player in Johnson, Tapuka, who made second-team All-American in the coaches' poll, and we'll be picking our most valuable player later in this game. Brkovich. He's their best outside shooter. Michigan State leads 8-6. Brkovich has 6 of the 8.
He's the best pure shooter in the Big Ten.
Rebound, Gonzalez. Johnson brings it down. Brkovich, 22-footer. Good! Foul, Branning, Notre Dame. And look at the Michigan State players. Johnson comes over to ruffle the hair of Brkovich. Magic loves to be a part of this game, no matter whether he's shooting, passing it, or just cheering. Watch Johnson.
I know. Magic's enthusiasm spreads not only to the ball players, but also to the fans. It's contagious. Look at that.
He has a smile that lights up the building.
Brkovich will be on the Canadian team in Moscow in 1980.
He now has 9 points. Brkovich alone has outscored Notre Dame, and Michigan State now has an 11-6 lead.
Hi, I'm Mike Brkovich, a 6'4" sophomore guard from Windsor, Ontario. And the Michigan game is important to me and the team because it's like a revenge game. We want to get back at them after that 1-point loss.
Mike Brkovich is their perimeter shooter. He's the man that they want to, in the event of a zone, be able to get the ball to him and get the outside shot.
Mike is only half of one of the few brother combinations playing on the same major college basketball team. His younger brother Don is a freshman guard, and playing for the same team is something both hoped would happen.
I think it's a big advantage because we're both roommates, and I tell him what he's doing wrong, and, you know, he can give me a lot of confidence, tell me what I'm doing wrong, and it's not like it's coming from a coach or a player, it's coming from your brother. Yeah, when I was in high school, you know, I kind of thought I'd be playing with my brother in college. I hope so, anyway.
Pulling away. 3-on-1. Brkovich scores. Basket good. Foul is on Reed of Indiana State.
Great outlet pass by Magic Johnson. We talk again about his ability. Now here we had the play right before. Kelser beat Bird on the baseline. Gilbert didn't slide over to protect. Here we have Magic Johnson throwing the ball out. 3-on-1, as you said, Dick. Brkovich takes it right to the hole. Reed not in position to stop him. Coming on down, they call a foul on Reed.
When Reed moved his arm, that's a foul. If you get position, you must hold and not move any part of your body. Otherwise, it's a blocking foul.
Bill Hodges trying to get an advantage over there. Telling his assistants, just relax and sit down. There was a blocking call.
Is he calling that a 2-shot foul?
I can't believe he did, because he certainly didn't cut his legs out. He was standing there to draw the charge.
Called it a flagrant foul.
I can't buy that one at all.
Brkovich, the best free
shooter for the Spartans. Misses the front end. He's 84.7% on the year. This only 9 of 59. That flagrant foul things up so beautifully.
Bird, way short. That was partially blocked by Brkovich. Nix, beautiful pass to Gilbert and a foul on Brkovich. You saw Johnson leap in the air. Magic thought they were going to call it on him.
Knicks is starting to create problems inside the zone now. They have to have this. Knicks got to have a good game to neutralize the zone inside. He has to penetrate.
That's a pretty good block coming over the top by Brkovich. Had his hand right on the ball.
Hodges knows it's all but over. He trails by 9, 49 seconds left. A tremendous collision at midcourt.
Wow.
And what's the call? The call is against Nemchik of Indiana State.
He's the one that had the offensive foul, too, but they're battling out there, and Indiana State had to take the gamble out for that steal to allow the long pass.
Wow, they're going to call 2 fouls on that again, but he stepped in, and they really hit each other. I'm pleased no one's hurt. There's 48 seconds left, and there comes the cry out for Michigan State Spartans. They're number 1, and they are number 1.
And their number 1 player, Earvin Magic Johnson, wins for his university $5,000. $1,000 during the regular year, $5,000 in this championship game. Very few can argue that sophomore. I said today, someone asked me if I could put a name on the back of his uniform, I would write joy. The joy for this game, the joy that he has brought his fans and anyone who loves basketball. Little frosting for Magic Johnson. Michigan State 69, Indiana State 60. Johnson leads all scores with 22. Bird 19 for Indiana State.
Well, got the national champs, Michigan State. 15 seconds. Let's see if we can catch a smile.
Earvin Johnson tacks on 2 more. He has 24. A reminder of our award ceremony following tonight. 12, 11. Oh, that Reed has hit 3 long. Oh, there's the pass. Look at Johnson. Oh, there we go. It's all over. Michigan State University, national champions, 1979. They chant that cry on every campus in every sport. Everyone wants to be number 1, but only one can make it. And Larry Bird, a great star, congratulates the victors.
Dick, I enjoyed working with you and Billy.
Same here, gang.
Earvin Johnson leads his Michigan State team to the final score, 75-64.
Gregory Kelser and Michigan State has won its first NCAA championship in history, defeating Indiana State 75-64.
A team that didn't know it was supposed to be washed up. A team that, through the force of its own determination, had come back from a mid-season basketball graveyard to new life and spectacular success. The Spartans hadn't forgotten the pledge made to each other on a bleak January night after the loss to Northwestern. A pledge the Spartans molded into an unbreakable bond.
So, Mike, were you aware that you're the first Canadian guy to ever win an NCAA championship? Not only that, to start in a game. Were you aware of that?
I wasn't aware of it.
You're the first.
I wasn't aware of it until after the game. Someone told me.
Yeah.
So I forget how I learned. It was through a reporter in Detroit that told me that, I think, that I was the first Canadian that's starting and playing the whole game. And so I learned that after the game. I didn't realize it during the game because I was so linked. You got to remember, we were so linked to Detroit back then. I was more linked to Detroit than I was Toronto. So I did see myself as a Canadian, but I saw most of my friends in Detroit. Most of the time I went play basketball was Detroit. I'm sure at the time, a lot of guys have gone on since then to win NCAA championships and achieve great things. You know, get drafted in the NBA. First round pick was from Toronto, right? Steve Nash won the MVP of the NBA. And again, it wouldn't have been as impactful if not the significance Magic and Bird had made in the pros for 10 or 12 years.
So I'm sure people want to know, you know, you're a Canadian guy from Windsor, you go to Michigan State, you start, you win the national championship. What does that mean? How did that impact your life and your career moving forward? I know that's a big question.
Big question.
But people want to know, what did that mean in terms of your life moving forward?
I think when it happened, it was overwhelming. You know, here I am playing on national TV. I come back to Windsor. I come back to my parents' home. They wanted to do an interview. They had to do all these things back in '79 because we didn't have all this media exposure. I think it's a lot for a young kid to handle. All that notoriety, all that exposure, being from not a really big town like Windsor. I think sometimes you get full of yourself a little bit, right? And until you get over yourself, I think until you get in your 20s, the great thing about playing college basketball and achieving all of these things isn't the championships. It's the relationships you've made that are going to last you your entire life. So my relationship with my teammates, the relationship with people at the faculty, the guys working at our gym, all of those people that you're not even thinking about, right? The bus driver that drove you around, we stayed friends with. The equipment guy, Dominic, you know, we remained friends for years. In order to have a championship team, you need an infrastructure around you. People don't realize that. You need trainers, you need people that are feeding you, you need people that are washing your uniforms, you need people. So I think it was a lot to handle for an 18 or 19-year-old. All that celebrity, notoriety, all of that at once. But I think as time went on, you got put in your place. I say life has a way of humbling you, right?
So what kept you grounded at the time?
I think my parents, a lot of my friends, sometimes they don't see the significance of that, right? Ethnic parents, oh yeah, are you getting your degree? So basketball's great. Are you going to get a degree? What are you going to do for work? I mean, you got a whole life ahead of you.
Well, how did they feel about you being such a big celebrity, watching you on TV, winning the championship?
I think it was overwhelming for them. Here they are sitting there watching me on NBC, you know, playing and getting interviews, you know, from the Windsor Star and so on. It might have been overwhelming for them. And a lot of people that I played with in high school. You know, hey, Mike was just playing with me a year ago or against me. Now here he is. He's playing on a national championship.
With Magic Johnson?
Yeah, with Magic Johnson. Can I get Magic's autograph? Mike, how can I get that? Here, can I give you this? I still have people to this day bring me in uniforms. Can you get Magic to sign it for me, Mike, or sign this card for me?
Don't they ask you for your autograph?
Well, they can see me every day.
Yeah, but still. So you mentioned a few things about your teammates, but tell us a few more memories about your teammates at Michigan State, like Magic, Kelser, Terry Donnelly, Charles, any of those guys, your brother?
Yeah, I mean, Earvin was easy to describe because when I came to Michigan State, Earvin was a freshman, and I have to say his parents, you talk about your parents being your role models. I remember Earvin as me and at a dorm being from Canada, you know, he was so accommodating, friendly, wanted to make you feel part of the team. I remember him taking me to his house to watch Dr. J and the 76ers because we didn't have cable in the dorms. So he said, Mike, come on over to my mom and dad's. I'll pick you up and I'll bring us back to the dorm. We could watch Dr. J and Daryl Dawkins and George McGinnis and all these guys at his parents. And his parents, here I am, first time I met his mom and dad. They couldn't be more open, right? I met his sisters, and he was really encouraging. Hey, Mike, you don't want to shoot it, but you got to shoot it. You're going to help. Guys aren't going to be able to double team me if you're left open. You need to, we need to get you more minutes. He was real encouraging.
Building your confidence.
Confidence up,
Yeah.
and even after,
What you need.
yeah, after I graduated, and Earvin was with the Lakers, I always worked his basketball camp in Lansing.
Oh, did you?
And he was always, hey, Mike, we'll have you as a camp counselor. And I got to meet a lot of the NBA players at that time that were working with Earvin, and that would be Mark Aguirre, Isaiah, Julius Erving, Kareem, Keith Wilkes. They all worked Earvin's camp in Lansing, and then Earvin had a team that would tour all of Michigan in July. So I would always be on that team because he would want to take care of you, right? You'd get paid extra if you were on that team, and the NBA players would get paid, but I wouldn't get what an NBA, but I would, we'll take care of you, Mike. Don't worry. And at the time, it was a lot of money when you're 23 or 4.
Of course.
So I would work the camp. And to this day, when Earvin sees you, he cannot be more accommodating, more humble, more friendly. He and his wife, it's as if we're still in college. It's not like Earvin's this guy, like
This mega
and
star.
his brother. He's got a brother, Larry, again, who I got to be good friends with. Larry will call me. I'll call him whenever I need a jersey signed. I have to go through Larry, but Larry goes, I'll get Magic will sign that, Mike. So, what I could say about Earvin is he's down to earth. He's humble. He hasn't forgotten his roots. He helps his community. He's done a lot of amazing things for communities in Los Angeles and the Detroit area and Lansing. So I think he's a great human being.
It's amazing.
Yeah, it is.
Amazing.
It's an amazing story. And the rest of my teammates, we keep in contact with. Greg Kelser works for the Pistons. Obviously, he's
George
doing well.
Blaha.
George Blaha and him have been doing those games forever. Rick Kay, who's from Catholic Central, we have dinner once in a while. I think any championship team, and you guys, you played on championship teams, there's that chemistry and glue that keeps your team together somehow, and you're all bonded by winning this championship, right? So those are special moments you have.
Yeah, exactly. That's how it is with Rob and I.
Yeah.
People say, how do you guys know each other? Oh, we played on the same team. They go, okay. I say, yeah, I was a star. He was the 8th man.
But you guys won a city championship, didn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, we did. Also 2 OFSA championships.
2 OFSA
back-to-back,
championships,
Back to
right?
back.
Yeah.
Back to back, right?
Yeah.
You guys have a very similar story,
Yeah.
very parallel story.
Yeah.
We were talking about with Rob, we said, the big difference is that, you got in that situation at Michigan State with Magic at the right time and all that stuff. It was just, again, the universe conspired for all this to happen. And
Yeah.
you went into the limelight and
And
you're
it
a
was-
public figure now, basically.
Well, thank you. But even in my sophomore year, we were ranked #1 in the country pre-season, and then we lost at North Carolina by a point and a last-second shot, and we were 4-4 in the Big Ten. We were 4-4 in the Big Ten when the coaches decided to start me, and we had players in the middle of the season quit and transfer. So we had a guy named Gerald Busby who ended up having a great career in Division II. That was a guard. So again, I wasn't starting until 8 games into the Big Ten, and from that point on, I started for the rest of my career. Who knows if we would have been 7-0 or, we shouldn't even have been in the tournament my second year. We almost lost the Big Ten. Back then, you had to win the Big Ten to get in the tournament. So there's all these sub-stories underneath the main story that people don't even remember. It's
complicated.
It's complicated, yeah,
Yeah,
it is. You'd have to be a real Michigan State fan. And there's more people I meet. They could even be here at the brewery that are my age. What's that state flag doing up there? I guess. Well, I played at Michigan. What year did you play? Well, 79. And they all remember this so-called famous, you'd have to be a Michigan State alumnus. We played Iowa, and we were 4-4 in the Big Ten, and we had to win every game the rest of the year to qualify to win the tournament. So we were playing in Iowa, and there's 2 seconds left in the game, and we're down 2 points, and it's our ball. Coach calls timeout. I think there might have been 3 seconds left, and coach says, here's what we're going to do. We're going to inbound the ball. Everyone thinks it's going to go to Earvin. It's going to go to Jay. Jay, you got to shoot it and make it, and let's get into overtime. Well, everything we were supposed to do didn't happen. The ball got tipped, and it got tipped to me. And I shot right at the top of the key. The clock goes down, and buzzer goes, and I miss. But the referee calls a foul on a guy named Ronnie Lester, who was an All-American.
I remember him.
Yeah, so picture this. We're down 2, I get to shoot 2. And we need to make the 2 to get into overtime.
Right.
So sure enough, I go to the line. Iowa, who they had a really famous coach named Lowe Olson, who ended up at Arizona.
Yeah.
So he calls a couple timeouts. I go out and hit my first shot. Now we're down a point. And then coach gets us back and says, hey, Mike, you're going to make this shot. And after you make it, here's what we're going to do. Well, sure enough, I make the second shot, and then we go into, I think, overtime and win the game.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone remembers that game of our generation, of my era, as a great one of the games. And sure enough, everyone I see, well, I was at that game. Well, I'm going, how many people are at that game? You hit those 2 free throws against Iowa. If you were a real Michigan State fan of our generation, you would remember that game and the tip against Notre Dame. Everyone remembers that play. So there were a lot of special moments during that season, even though it was 45 years ago, that people remember. And people will bring up, I could be somewhere, well, I was at that game, and we start talking. So there's a lot of amazing memories that I've got, but it's not the memories and the basketball achievements. I go back to relationships. It's all these people I've met and made friends with over the course of my life.
Now, Mike, playing in the Big Ten, you played in a lot of NCAA tournaments against Larry Bird. I remember playing against St. John's when I played college basketball. They were ranked number 1. They had Chris Mullins, Mark Jackson, Walter Berry, and Bill Wennington. These guys were all first-round NBA draft picks. So for me, that was kind of a highlight of playing against these guys that were going to be just great NBA players later. Who are some of the guys that you played against that went on to sort of become NBA stars and Hall of Famers?
That's a great question. And another reason why I felt I was so fortunate and blessed, back when I played in the Big Ten, Rob, every single Big Ten team had a great NBA player or would eventually be an NBA player. It first started with a guy named Michael Thompson, who was Klay Thompson's dad.
Yes, I remember him.
He was
Minnesota.
he was the first player picked in the '77 draft. In the following year, Magic was the first player picked. But let's say you take Minnesota. They had Michael Thompson. They had a guy named Kevin McHale.
Yeah.
Oh, yes,
they had Randy Brewer, who played for years in the NBA. They had Trent Tucker, who played. So their team had 5 first-round picks. Now you look at Michigan had Phil Hubbard, Mike McGee. You look at Illinois. They had a guy named Eddie Johnson who played in the NBA for won 6th man in the NBA for years. They had 3 or 4 NBA players. I think one year we added it up. Ohio State had 4 NBA guys. They had Herb Williams, Kelvin Ramsey, Ronnie Lester for Iowa. I mean, the only team that really didn't have any great NBA players was Northwestern, but they were an academic school, right? Isaiah, there's another great player I played against at Indiana. Indiana had 4 or 5 great. Mike Woodson, who coached the Raptors, he was a great player. Isaiah, Ray Tolbert. There was always a great player on all of the teams we played against. So the league always had a consensus All-American or Joe Barry Carroll with Purdue.
Purdue
was the first player picked one year, a 7'1" guy that they're comparing Edie to. So, I mean, again, it wasn't just Larry Bird. I mean, if I had to go pick the 5 best players that I played against, it would be Larry Bird, Kevin McHale, probably Isaiah. You had Herb Williams, played 15 years in the NBA. You had, I mean, you could go on and on. That's how blessed I was, right?
Big list of NBA players.
Forget about Notre Dame. Think about all those guys, whether it was Lambeer, Tripucka. Orlando Woolridge was a great NBA player. Yeah.
In '81, I came to a game at Jennison Fieldhouse where you were playing Indiana with Isaiah, and that was an amazing game. I think he only played 1 year, right? And he won
2 years.
Did he play 2 years?
2 years, yeah.
And I remember just a young player, freshman, he was just amazing. Just so quick and You know, he led the team.
Oh yeah, he was. He was an amazing. He looked young too.
He was very young, baby face.
Yeah, baby. He looked like he was 12 years old.
Yeah, yeah.
For sure. But no, a lot of great players, a lot of great memories.
Actually, talking about that, I'll let you show some of these pictures.
This, I remember, was at a Magic Johnson basketball camp that I was working with him after his second year with the Lakers. This is Isaiah and I after he finished his first year with the Pistons, because Isaiah and Magic were real close with Mark Aguirre. They had the same agent. They shared the same agent. You can't even recognize us in these pictures. We're so young. And then this picture was Jay Vincent and myself when we were co-captains in '81. We took a picture by Sparty. The camp that Earvin had a lot of great players from the NBA show up that we all met, and I had great pictures with. And here again, I'm watching them in an NBA final, and then here's Dr. J or Daryl Dawkins or George Gervin would be there. Just great, great NBA players.
Did you ever go down to watch any of the NBA finals with the Lakers?
Never made it to an NBA final.
No?
No, I made it to an NBA final in Detroit
Okay.
when the Pistons won in '89 and '90, and then in 2004, I was at all those games, which were great memories too, right? And some of my good friends, I had a guy named Rick Mahorn, who played at the Pistons. He comes in here sometimes. I just spoke to him yesterday. And Earl Cureton that paid for UAD, so all of those guys I would keep in contact with.
Actually, Rob, you also played against Doc Rivers, you told me.
Yeah, that was, I think, my second year at St. Bonaventure. We went to Milwaukee to play against Marquette.
Marquette.
Doc Rivers was, I think, a senior then. And yeah, that was another great NBA player, another highlight.
Another highlight, I got a great Doc Rivers story. We recruited him at Michigan State, and I think I was a sophomore or a junior. That would make sense because you were, what, 3 or 4 years behind me?
Yeah.
So he visited, and he was shooting free throws with me, and little did I know, 20, 30 years later, he not only would be a great player, he'd be a great coach. Because he was from Chicago too, wasn't he from Chicago? Yeah. And he went to Marquette, for sure.
Now, I got a question here. You guys, is this the first time you're ever interacting more than just saying hi to each other?
Yeah.
So it's
we never played together or against each other.
Or against each other.
It's great that this is happening today, and you've played against NBA players, and you've played a lot against NBA players. If you guys had a game of 1-to-1, who would win?
Right now, I'd have a hard time getting out of bed.
Well, if we went down to the old Y, which is closed down, unfortunately.
The way he looks, I've got my money on him.
The way he shoots, I don't think
I got my money on him. I got my money on him.
I like that. That's amazing. That's amazing, Mike, all these players that you played against, and you know them.
Yeah.
And it's fantastic. What great memories both you guys have. How about this, There's so many Serbian players in the NBA today. I mean, if you go back a ways, you look at Vlade Divac, you look at Peja Stojakovic. And now you got Jokic, you got Luka, who's half Serbian.
Oh, yeah.
You got Nikola Jovic on Miami. You got Bojan Bogdanovic on Atlanta.
Oh, yeah.
I think there's about 7 Serbians. Like, what are they putting in the water back in Serbia to get these guys to grow 7 feet and come and play in the NBA?
That's a great story. To pursue why so many NBA players, or why not just basketball, but you look at tennis.
Oh yeah, Novak Djokovic.
Correct. You look at soccer. I think basketball started in the 70s in Yugoslavia with Kresimir Kosic. He went to BYU, and they emphasized basketball just like they did water polo and tennis. Everyone in my hometown, where my mom and dad are born, is called Trebinje. Great players in the Euro League. They had one guy named Bogi Roda, who was the MVP of the Euro League for 2 or 3 years, a 6'8" point guard. It is something in the water. It's tall population. No, you're right. A lot of great NBA players from our area.
Did you ever go down and play in Serbia?
Never played in Serbia. I go back home every year to visit my uncle and my mom's family.
Nice.
And I go by the basketball courts and I watch the young kids play. And it's great. It's kind of similar to here. It parallels. They've got these not really nice basketball courts in the housing, in the projects, and all these kids playing. And it's on a Sunday, you go down there and you just buy like a pop and you sit there and you watch for hours all these kids playing because there's nothing else to do, right? So, yeah, our hometown is great. Donnie and I go usually every year and visit.
How's your brother doing, by the way?
He's doing great. Lives in Las Vegas. He's about to retire. He's been in the insurance business for 35 years.
Okay.
So he and his wife travel a lot, so he's doing great.
So you guys traveled to Serbia?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
One of the most exciting things for me was when I had a chance to play for Canada and wear a uniform that said Canada across the front. It's always a proud moment when you get to represent your country on the national stage. And I know you had an opportunity to play with the Canadian national team. Talk a little bit about your experience with the 1980s team that was going to compete in the Olympics. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, that was, again, I thought it was a great team because it was filled with great players. And one of the players, obviously, you're familiar with is Lowe Trojans because he does the Raptors games. So he was at the University of Minnesota. He ended up transferring to Syracuse. But we had Jay Triano. We had a guy named Jim Zoet that went to Kent State that also played here at Lakehead, I think. They won a Canadian championship. It was coached by Jack Donahue, who was Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's high school coach. So I played on that team. Again, had great memories. A guy named Steve Atkin, who played at Oakville Blakelock in high school, we played against one another. And I mean, Jack Donahue was storyteller, typical New York guy. He'd sit around dinner and that's all he talked about was the great high school teams. He talked about Kareem, he talked about New York City. He taught at Power Memorial High School. And again, it's a small world. Our equipment manager was from New York City and he knew Jack Donahue. Our equipment guy played at Michigan State in the 50s. So he knew every single New York high school coach because New York basketball is like a fraternity. Every coach knows every coach, like Hurley's dad, right? So Dominic, it's a great funny story. He goes, oh yeah, I know Larry Brown, I know this coach, I know Jack Donahue. We always thought, he doesn't know. Sure enough, Mike, let's go down to, we're going to go down to the Palace, not the Palace, it was the Silverdome. The Pistons were playing. I'm going to go meet Larry Brown because Larry Brown played at this high school. And sure enough, he'd take us down there, introduce us to Larry Brown. He worked for the Knicks, and he gave us old Knicks warm-ups when he was equipment manager for the Knicks. But he knew Jack Donahue and said, you're going to like Jack. So as soon as I mentioned to Jack, I know, Dominic Marino. Oh, I know him. He, right away, another New York guy. So it was a great experience. We went to Puerto Rico, played against the U.S. team that had Isaiah, Ralph Sampson, Kevin McHale. We came in fourth, disappointing fourth place. But again, Jay went on to do amazing things with his career. Leo's done great things. So it was a really great group of guys to spend the summer with. And you did feel proud you could wear a Canadian jersey. I think it's one of my proudest moments.
Jack Donahue, I was also coached by Jack, and you're right, he's a great storyteller. We were up in Ottawa at his home in Ottawa, and we were all sitting around, and Jack is telling stories. He said this, he said that, a lot of people are concerned about what people think of them. They're preoccupied with what other people think about them. And he said to us, most people aren't thinking about you. Most people are thinking about themselves. And I never forgot that because I think that's so relevant today that we may be very, very concerned about what people think of us, but the reality is they're not thinking about you. So that was the best Jack Donahue story I ever heard.
He's full of stories.
And I never forgot it.
Yeah.
So he was a teacher by stories.
Oh yeah, and he was a teacher.
Yeah.
And he loved stories and he knew everybody. And
yeah.
I mean, I remember playing the U.S. 3 or 4 times in Palm Beach. We had a scrimmage with him before we played in the Pan Am games, and Jack knew Bobby Knight, and Bobby Knight was coaching the Pan Am team in the U.S., and his assistant was Krzyzewski. So, but that was a great team. They had Kyle Macy, they had Isaiah, they had Ralph Sampson, they had Gaminsky, they had Isaiah. Isaiah was in high school on that team. That's how good he was.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Mike, there's a lot of Canadians in the NBA today. Tell us what you think about the growing presence of the Canadians. Like on Monday, we have Zach Edey playing in the championships.
I think it's great for Canadian basketball. From when we played, you and I didn't have that many Canadians playing Division I. I link it to how Basketball Canada has developed and cultivated a culture in Canada for basketball. And I think the coaches at the coaching levels, it starts there. Great teams, high school teams, the Toronto, everything in Toronto is basketball. So I think it's great for the country. You know, the first player picked in the NBA one year, and let's face it, Steve Nash and winning multiple MVPs in the NBA, that's been great. And you know, everywhere you look, you've got the kid for the Nuggets, starting guard, right? Jamal, he's playing well, won a world championship last year. So basketball in Canada has really evolved from the 1970s.
Mike, you had a little bit of a taste of the NBA. You were drafted by the Milwaukee Bucks, or
Bucks,
were they called something else at the
No,
time?
they were called the Bucks.
Okay,
yep.
so you drafted by the Bucks. You're obviously a great team right now, but you were drafted by them. That must have been something pretty special to be, you know, to see your name in the NBA draft.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that experience and what that was like for you.
It was a great experience because my senior year, I had a lot of injuries. I had broken or fractured my foot, and so I missed some games. And I wasn't sure I was going to be drafted by an NBA team, but I went to these camps, pre-draft camps, and I had played well. And I played in a couple All-Star games and was the MVP. One in Indianapolis, actually. So probably a week before the draft, 2 or 3 teams had expressed an interest, and they came and they had you go work through the drills and so on. So I was really surprised that the Bucks drafted me. The bad news was they had the second best record in the NBA that year, and they had the second best record. They had lost, and the Sixers beat them in the first round, but they were loaded with great players, which were Bob Lanier, Marcus Johnson, Mickey Johnson, Junior Bridgman, Sidney Moncrief, and coached by Don Nelson. So I had gone to the Summer League, their Summer League program, and then got invited back to the camp in September. We were at Marquette University. So I was there a few weeks, probably a little longer, and I had known some of the players because Bob Lanier was from Detroit, and I had worked at camp in the Detroit area with Bob. So he was at the end of his career, and Coach Nelson was there. I got cut by the Bucks, ended up playing for the Wisconsin Flyers, which were kind of their farm team at the time, the developmental league. But I was lucky. Here again, I got drafted by an NBA team. How many guys are and back then the league was so fewer teams, right? That they don't have the amount of teams that they had now, and they only had 11 players per team too. And you know, you had a lot more developmental leagues that they do back then. So it was a good experience. Really looked forward to going to camp. Never made it.
I remember following what was happening in the Windsor Star, and you were basically down to the last cut, and I think the guy that got your position, if I'm not mistaken, was Brian Winters. Is that correct?
Well, Brian was there a while.
Oh, he was already there.
Brian was a veteran. They had injuries. They had guys that were injured, but they had Marcus Johnson was a great player. Brian Winters was a great player too, but he didn't start. They started Moncrief and Quinn Buckner. And then off the bench, Brian Winters was involved in the Kareem Abdul-Jabbar trade 5 years earlier when they traded all their first picks. So Brian was about my size. He was a great shooter, a real great player from South Carolina. But I think a lot of times there were injuries and guys were waiting to get off so they needed, I hate to say it, players to play against. So
right.
So they keep bodies around to play against and scrimmage against. So that's why you're around sometimes. And but again, I was lucky to be even in that company, right? You're blessed.
You know, you were a rock star. You went all the way to the pinnacle of NCAA basketball. How did you handle that transition from going from a rock star in NCAA basketball to a normal everyday guy?
I think that's a tough transition for a young person to transition into. One moment you're a starter for a national championship team. Whether you're basketball, football, or baseball at that level, Rob, you know the significance of playing on a Division I team. We won a championship. You're playing with great players. All of a sudden, you're cut. I ended up going back to Michigan State to work on my master's degree while I was playing in the CBA. Ended up there as an assistant coach for a year because I thought I might have wanted to get into coaching, but I didn't. It's a transition. It takes a couple of years for you to get back into what I call civilian life, right?
How did you feel emotionally about that? Were you Were you okay emotionally?
I think like
or?
most, and Rob will share this with you, I think most basketball players, no matter what, there's a lot of ego. And you think, I could still make it. I'm still going to pursue it.
Yeah.
I'm competitive. Why is that guy playing ahead of me? I'm better than him. I mean, all of those things that are instilled in you are good to be competitive, but the realization has to come, hey, this dream, you've pursued it, it's time to focus on other things.
I do agree with you, Mike. It's a tough transition, not just physically, but mentally, because you're on this big stage, you know, the lights are on you, and all of a sudden you're off in the darkness, and there's no more fans cheering for you. No one's looking for your autograph.
Nope.
That can be a little bit of a shock for a lot of us.
I think it is.
And you know, I think that's a part of sports that people don't see, that transition. What do guys do? How do they navigate that? For you, you know, obviously you've navigated that.
Yeah.
How did you do it? How did you navigate through that? Because you had to go through a process. Maybe you haven't really thought about it, but from the outside looking in, you've transitioned well and now into becoming an entrepreneur or businessman. Tell us how you
Rob,
went through that space.
I want to share, I mean, I think what you said was really relevant here, that it's hard to transition.
Yeah.
Because whether you're at St. Bonaventure or at Michigan State in East Lansing, everything is football and basketball at Michigan State. I could go back there now, people will know who I am, right? It's just like I'm sure if you go back to St. Bon, I mean, it's a hard transition that a lot of people they don't transition. They get caught into depression, they get caught into, you know, why me? You know, why aren't I playing more? What did I do with my life? I didn't get a degree.
Yeah.
Sometimes athletes are spoiled, not just by the athletic department or the coaches. They're spoiled by their parents, they're spoiled by their peers. I think where I was really fortunate, once I got back to Michigan State, I think I ended up coming back to Windsor and enrolling at the University of Windsor. I found a couple of mentors. I wasn't looking for them. Somehow they found me. Here again, here's another miracle in my life, I call it. Worked for a couple of older guys that I met through Michigan State. They were alumni. One in particular, he was from Grand Rapids. He said, do you really want to coach basketball? Is that your calling? You better be passionate. Don't think this is just a progression you're supposed to make. You know, Mike, I've got a company, come and work for me. I'll expose you to a lot of different businesses. Maybe there's something that's going to be appealing to you. Life is going to go by very quickly. He spent a lot of time with athletes because like most athletic departments, we had jobs in the off season. He would give a lot of athletes jobs. He was part of this alumni group. So I think he took a liking to me somehow, right? He said, well, I could offer you a job, I could transition you. Let's see if there's anything in my group of companies that you like doing. And like most people of his generation, he was born in the 1920s. So he had gone through the Depression, gone through the Second World War, fiercely patriotic, typical what I call guy born in that generation. So he and a couple of guys spent a lot of time with me. And that's very unique because I was in my 20s and they were in their 60s, right? And so wisdom, like anything, you watch, you listen. You love playing basketball though. You still want to play basketball. You guys know when you're 25 or 6 or 7, you still want to play basketball. You don't want to give up on it.
Still want to play now, Mike.
Yeah, that's right. Our bodies won't let us. I mean, those were the best, think about it, they're the best years of your life.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right? They're the best years of your life. So why give it up? And so I remember him telling me one night, it's great to pursue a dream and you love what you do, but what are you going to do for the rest of your life? You got to take that same passion and utilize it in another area. And so where I was really fortunate and blessed, I had mentors like that in my life that a lot of people don't have, right? So again, somehow the pieces all fit together for me, and I was lucky to meet these guys and start a career and get advice. You know, they had big companies, and that was the start of my business career.
So what kind of companies did they have? What kind of business did they do?
Well, he owned a restaurant chain in Grand Rapids that comprised of 20 restaurants, but he owned car dealerships, he owned wrecking yards, he owned dry cleaners, he owned gyms, he he had like 1,000 employees. But if you were to walk in here, you'd think it's like a pauper, right? He's from that generation that everything, you look at him, he wasn't material, he wasn't, he's one of these type of guys that graduated from Michigan State, loved Michigan State football and basketball, loved Detroit. So I went to work for him originally. I went to work in his leasing company. He had a car leasing company, but then he wanted to come and meet my parents. He thought that was important. He would always do things in the community that he would bring me along a lot of times.
Did you mention his name? What was his name?
His name was Richard Faber, Dick Faber.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And I mentioned Dominic Marino, that was the equipment manager. He became a mentor, right? He was in his 60s. I can mention a couple of other guys that were Michigan State graduates that I had met through the athletic department. And I had met him at games, Rob. I was walking out and one guy said, "Hey, are you Mike? Do you mind signing this for my or whatever?" So well, you're a pretty nice kid. He says, "Here's my card. Can I ever do anything for you? Let me know." And I think the part of the story, we look at athletics and we look at these achievements. It was a great achievement, but I look at all of the other people I met there and the doors that opened because of these people and the friends I met and the relationships that I started that are still around today. That's an amazing story. You've got 12 teammates, right? Or 15 teammates. You don't get to meet all these other people that I still keep in contact with today. That's kind of a special story.
Those are the gifts you got.
Yeah.
Treasures.
Mike, I like to use the term chasing a dream. You mentioned that earlier, chasing a dream. There's a lot of athletes who, when the dream kind of ends, they still continue to chase it, and they don't know what to do. There's a loss of identity. Who am I? I'm not a basketball player anymore. I'm not a football player anymore. And they have really difficulty stepping into that sort of the unknown.
Yeah.
So what would you say to maybe somebody listening who might be struggling? They didn't get drafted or they didn't make the team. Where do they go from there? Because there is a real thing here that guys kind of feel lost when they leave the big stage.
Oh, they do.
And there's a big change coming. What would you say to guys who might be in that process right now?
When you say chase the dream, I have teammates, and I know a lot of NBA players that have had lengthy NBA careers that don't have a job now. Financially, they're at a point where they're not doing real well. I always say, Rob, you need to get over yourself, right?
Yes.
Don't you?
Yeah,
you need to get to a point where you get over yourself. I am not the center of the universe.
Yeah.
Nobody really cares about me except me and maybe my mom, right? Don't you? Isn't it true?
Jack Donahue, nobody's thinking about you.
Nobody's thinking about you. Who cares about you or what you did in Salt Lake City in 1979? That is not going to help you. You have to help yourself.
Yeah.
And how do you help yourself? You just rise up, right? Like a phoenix. You work hard. You go back to the things that made you successful. You work hard. It's the 10,000-hour rule. You have humility, you have honesty, you have integrity. You find something you're passionate about and translate the passion you had for basketball into your new passion. And it might not be a passion that is going to be as enjoyable or as rewarding as basketball.
Right.
Because after all, we are put on this stage, aren't we?
Right.
And it's difficult. Like you said, I could go on story upon story about how the down from coming off of that, people have not come back.
Yeah.
Well, Rob, you said it very well. I think a lot of times you get attached to that identity, like, I'm so-and-so, I was able to achieve this, and all of a sudden, you're not in that situation anymore, and you don't know what to do with yourself.
No, you don't.
You also said it very well, Mike. There's a spiritual teacher named Wayne Dyer. I don't know if you've ever heard of him.
I've heard of him.
Yeah, he was from Mount Clemens. He passed away, unfortunately, a few years ago. He said, a life lesson is don't let the wake of your boat guide your life. So if you've had bad things happen in the back, in the past, just like the waves of a boat when you're on the boat, that thing doesn't steer your life. It's the same thing if you had success. If you had success in the past, don't expect that success to propel you forward. What you have to use to propel you forward is just what you said, hard work, dedication, and resilience.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times we talk about some athletes that get down from that high and they're just lost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and that's a shame. So that's great advice.
It is.
That you're giving.
And he said a key thing, you know, athletes have great habits. That's what made them great, you know, great athletes. And you don't lose that.
No.
And you can just go back to your habits and discipline, and that will inevitably propel you into something else.
Yeah.
Success really is just about habits.
It
it's
is.
in you. It's in you because you proved it.
Oh, it is.
As an athlete.
And you know, I sometimes chuckle when I see some of these Facebook posts from accomplishments where these athletes from 30 or 40 years ago, they're still looking in the rear view mirror.
Yeah, exactly.
Talking about what they did in 1985. Instead of talking about what am I doing today? How am I bettering my community? Here's what I'm doing. For some reason, I think that transition is extremely difficult for a lot of people to transition into. I don't think they get over it, some of them.
Yeah.
And I don't know, like you said, it's difficult to watch sometimes, and it's very painful.
Yeah, yeah. I think, I don't know if this can happen, but somewhere along the journey, the educational system, the school that we're in, can maybe help to prepare guys for that transition into sort of the real world. And maybe that's not something significant for the schools, but maybe that's something schools could focus on moving forward if they realize that some guys just are not going to do that very well.
No, I think that's a really important statement, that these schools bear some responsibility for looking after these athletes.
Yeah.
I think in the past, as soon as your eligibility was used up, you became worthless to them.
Yeah.
And in some way, morally, you need something or someone to have some way of helping these people transition into what I call civilian life. I mean, it's difficult though to watch, Rob, and you've seen it. You've had teammates, I'm sure, that, and we all were talking about it, one of our teammates in high school, I mean, going through a tough time. I mean, it's hard to watch.
Yeah, yeah.
No, you're both right. I mean, during the college, you know, these athletes get exploited in a way.
Yeah.
Of course, they love it. You know, they get the scholarship, the education, but at the same time, you know, the coaches are making millions of dollars.
Yep.
The TV is generating millions of dollars, right? These guys are getting pushed to their limit. So yeah, I agree with both of you that it's a great thing that they should institute in programs is what's going to happen after these guys are done. It's a great point.
Absolutely.
Mike, it seems like your life has gone very well overall. You've handled a lot of hurdles, but tell us about some of the major challenges you've had in your life and how have you overcome those?
Challenges I've had in my life, I guess the first challenge would have been transitioning. I was confused, maybe should I get into teaching, get into coaching. I had an opportunity to get into coaching through Coach Heathcote.
How come you didn't go into coaching? That would have been a natural space for you to fall into, right?
No, it would have been.
been.
I assistant coached for 1 year
Yeah.
at Michigan State. I just somehow felt that it wasn't my calling. At the time we had Kevin Willis, who ended up playing 18, 19 years in the NBA.
Yeah.
He was someone I was basically assigned. We were helping them transition into an academic program. I mean, working with the coaches, I enjoyed. Doing film work, I enjoyed. Doing scouting, I enjoyed. I didn't like recruiting. I'll be honest. I think that was the ugly side of college basketball I did not like. I think in order for you to be a successful college basketball coach, you need to be a successful recruiter. And sometimes you're telling kids things that are not the truth, right?
And that didn't line up with who you are as a person.
I think a lot of times, let's face it, I would just say you're a salesman. You're trying to recruit these kids to come to your program. And it wasn't just Michigan State. I had friends that were assistant coaches all across the country. And that was a complaint by a lot of guys at the time. I enjoyed my year of coaching. I ended up coming back to the University of Windsor. I taught high school for a year because the guy that I was working for at the time said, you know what, go back to, you know what, I don't know if you've got it out of your system. Go and get a degree in teaching and see if you want a high school, maybe that's your calling. Maybe you want to be a high school coach and work with kids. I tried that. I mean, I've been very blessed, right? Think about this. Cut by an NBA team, played in the CBA, went back and worked on your master's and were an assistant coach. Okay, went to the University of Windsor, got my teaching certificate, taught at the high school level, loved kids. I just didn't feel I was passionate about any of those things. Not that I couldn't have done them well. You know yourself, hard work transitions into success. No matter if you like what you're doing or not, if you put the hours in, and a lot of these older guys at the time that I was working for said, you know, this life goes by very quickly, and unless you have purpose and unless you love what you do, it's going to be a grind. So pick something you love to do. So I guess over the course of the next 10 years while I was working for these guys, found myself, got over the basketball bug. It was hard, right? I was playing it into my 30s, right? And I got to give this up. Because you don't want to give it up, right?
Right.
So luckily for me, I moved back to Windsor in 89 or 90. Had decided I wanted to start buying real estate. I figured, you know, that's a good way to, I kind of like old buildings. I like fixing up buildings. I had worked for guys that were doing that, had experience doing it. And so I said, you know, I got a lot of advice from the guys. They said, you know what, if we had to do it all over again, we'd have bought more real estate. You know, we own all these businesses, but our real estate is worth more than our business. So when I came back to Windsor, real estate values were very low. And I started buying apartment buildings. Still stayed into Walkerville I liked because the economics of it, I could buy buildings at a relatively low price. Started acquiring real estate and ended up, boy, at the blink of an eye, I'm 60. You know, have a lot of buildings, have a lot of great tenants, have a lot of great employees. And I think the success of all of your businesses are linked to your employees, how you treat your employees, how your employees work hard for you. You don't want to achieve any of this without a good infrastructure in place. So that's a big advantage I had, I think. Not many young guys have got mentors around them that have taken a liking to them and share this experience that they've had their whole life, right? So that's a big advantage I had.
So other than business and sports, you never really had any major challenges in your life, like personally, let's say? And of course, this might be a question that you don't want to answer, so you could say time out. But
out of bounds?
Out of bounds.
I think the biggest hurdle I had, I think, were losing all of these people in my life that were good to me. And all of a sudden, you get to the age, they're dying. You're losing them.
Very hard.
You lose your brother. I lost my brother when I was 60 and he was 62, and he worked with me side by side for 30 years. And you don't really tell these people how much you love them until they're gone or how valuable they are to you. You take things for granted, right? Every day we wake up, God graces us with another day. We have to do the best we can with what we have. I think those were difficult transitions for me. The people that were good to me and asked for hardly anything in return.
Mike, it's obvious that, you know, sports teaches you a lot. You know, there's a lot of lessons, a lot of habits that you learn, and I'm sure you took those habits, those lessons, and you applied them. Tell us a little bit about, you know, what it was in sports that you took away and took into the real world. You know, that sort of propelled you to continue in your success.
Boy, there's a lot of things I could take. They're going to surprise you. I think the biggest thing I took away was know yourself and know your personnel. KYP, my old college used to say, know your personnel. Don't throw him that pass if you know he can't, if he's got bad hands. Or, you know, you have to know yourself, your strengths and weaknesses as a person who's going to start a career or do whatever you want. And teamwork. Every teammate is different. You know, you've played with guys that have got big egos and they want the ball all the time, right?
Yes.
So
give him the ball.
Give him the ball. What am I doing giving him the ball? It's like a vacuum. I'll give it to him. I'm never going to get it back. I mean, there's certain guys, right? I think what I took from sports is hard work. The first thing. I had to work, me personally, I had to work hard to start. I had to work hard to become a starter. I had to work hard to improve as a player. I might have not had the athletic attributes that you had maybe. I wasn't as quick or as fast or strong as you, but I'm going to outwork you. And I think I took that work ethic and said to myself, well, I don't care what that guy over there is going to do, I'm going to outwork him. I'm going to work hard, I'm going to get up earlier, I'm going to work later, I'm going to put the hours in. And utilizing, just like teammates, how can I get out of these people around me the best version of themselves to help me and help themselves too, right? Because when you're creating employment for people like I do, you want them to be happy they've got families at home, right? They've got kids at home. You want them to leave knowing that they're going to come back tomorrow in a good frame of mind, right?
They're not going to show up if they're not happy.
If they're not happy. So I think the transition, though, Rob, is, to be perfectly honest, and this might be, I think a lot of athletes are spoiled. They don't think they have to work hard, and they think something is owed to them because they're a great athlete. They think they're going to step into some other field and have the same success they are as they had in basketball or football. They don't think they need to put the hours in or the effort in or the time in. Oh no, I'm going to be good at what I do because I'm
So-and-so.
Rob Samuels.
Yes.
Right, isn't it true?
Right.
It's our ego we have to keep in check.
Yeah.
True.
So Mike, let's fast forward a little bit. We're in the Walkerville distillery district here, and there's a lot going on here.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about your vision for this community, for this area. I mean, you're a man of vision. I know that just by listening and talking to you.
Trying to be a man of vision.
So tell us a little bit about your vision and what you see moving forward for this community, for this area.
Well, I think this area for me started 30 years ago when I started procuring and purchasing a lot of the historical buildings in Walkerville. I got kind of tied into this Walkerville area because its relationship to Detroit. Hiram Walker never lived in Windsor. He lived in Detroit. He owned the ferry, started Walkerville in the 1850s, opened up this brewery in the 1880s at the ripe old age of 75. So I always loved history and the great architecture of Detroit, which translates into Windsor because Hiram Walker hired the same architects that built those buildings in Detroit. They're hired here to do Willisted Manor, to do a lot of the buildings that I own. So I think for me personally, watching Walkerville evolve now to where these great buildings are being redone, the restaurants are opening, it's having a sense of community. People are purchasing homes in the area, starting families, really investing in their own residence, which is the key to a revitalization. Finally, I think being patient has paid off for me because sometimes this area has taken longer to develop than it should. If it was Toronto or somewhere else, like the Distillery District, it would have been developed years ago.
Yeah.
And I got a great relationship with Hiram Walkers. You know, we have a lot of development ahead of us, I think, in the next 10 years with all the housing crisis we have in Ontario. We have to come up with some creative ways to create housing here. But here at the brewery, you know, I again bought this business in 2011 because they were my tenant originally and they had gone bankrupt. I don't know if you know the story. They were my tenant for 10 years.
No.
And then they went bankrupt and I ended up buying it from the receiver. I was lucky here again. I got a wonderful partner, Ian Gorley, that has a real great background in spirits and beer. He was a head brewer. So he's helped me grow this business. And the most satisfying part of this business, I guess there's two components. We've got great employees that have been with me since day one, got married, they started their families, they live in the neighborhood, they come to work every day. And the other part of our story, and Ian is aligned with me, we're a community brewery. When I say it's not about the product that we produce, it's not about the alcohol, it's about linking ourselves to charities in Windsor. So we are really linked to, let's say, the Cancer Foundation here in Windsor, Hospice of Windsor, Unemployed Help Center, the Downtown Mission, Street Help up the road, Humane Society. Our space here is utilized by a lot of charities to raise money. We create great beer for those charities and we promote it and we give so much of our revenue to the charities. So this is a way I could give back to the community, which I think is a hallmark of a successful person or human being. It's not how much you take in, it's how much you give back, right? So that's more important. But I think Walkerville is just beginning to revive itself. Walkerville's always been a great part of Windsor's heritage. So I think probably here in the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to see great things happen here.
Well, what's happening across the street with the distillery project exactly?
Well,
what details do you have?
Teaming up with the Rosati Group to create, we're hoping, a boutique hotel and about 100 luxury condominiums to make it a distillery district. So we're working with the city Hiram Walkers, and ourselves to have a final product, I think, that the city will be proud of.
Wow, nice. Actually, Rob was interested in maybe coming to get a condo here in Windsor, you were saying one time. It'd be a perfect opportunity. You can move across the street and you guys can come and chit-chat about basketball and life.
And yeah, about life.
Hey?
Oh, yeah.
It'd be perfect.
It would
Absolutely.
be.
That would be
like that
special
idea?
to come back to the city of Windsor and be a part of this community. Yeah.
Yeah.
We'd love to have you, Rob.
Oh, yeah. But I mean, sometimes I'm harder on athletes than maybe I should be. Because, you know, sometimes, Rob, I see so many guys I played with, and they're kind of upset at where they're at in life. They somehow feel like they should have done better with their life or done more things with their life. And I always say, you have every opportunity like I had, right? I mean, sure, I've gotten some of the breaks.
Yeah.
But the harder you work, the luckier you are.
Do they feel like they're owed something? They're entitled?
Yeah, I think so.
They're really entitlement?
They have a huge sense of entitlement, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that's where you come in, Mike. You get to mentally talk to these guys and sort of give them some direction and guidance. And I think that's important.
It is important to tell them, give me a break. I'm tired of listening to this.
Yeah.
I mean, just think about the opportunities that a lot of these young people that you and I had. We had great opportunities. We had coaches that cared about us, spent time with us, gave us this opportunity. So we have to look at it as a blessing, right?
Yeah.
For sure.
And I'd agree with you. I don't think anyone lacks opportunity. I think the difference is some people jump on the opportunities they have and they make use of it. And some people don't, for whatever reason.
No, for whatever reason, I know.
Yeah.
Mike, as a former elite athlete that you were before, you understand the importance of maintaining good health. What's your approach to health and wellness, including diet and lifestyle habits, and what advice would you give to the listeners?
Wow, that's a real deep question here. Rob asked me same question. I think, first of all, let's start with this brewery. Consumption of alcohol, keep it at a minimum. That's the first thing. Even though I'm in the production of alcohol, this is more a social setting and a community brewery. I think your consumption of alcohol, keep your sugar intake to a minimum. Don't eat gluten. Exercise regularly. Make sure you get a lot of sleep. And another key component is, I don't know if you agree, don't have a lot of stress in your life. Stress in our lives gets linked to possessions, like material things. That takes time, energy, and money. And we were talking about keep your life simple, right?
Yeah.
The simpler your life is, the less stress you're going to have, and you're not going to keep track of all these things you have.
That's good advice. Declutter your life.
I think
from
so.
all these material possessions. Rob and I often talk about how people in today's world, they're always trying to attain and achieve material possessions. That's not something that's going to make you ultimately happy. You know, because when you get something, then it's, okay, I've used this, now I want something else, I want something else. People don't realize where the true joy is, and that's the joy of being.
That's right.
People don't appreciate the fact that they're alive, and so they always want, to get materials to make them happy.
You know what else I think people don't realize? How we undervalue relationships.
That's a big one.
Over the course of your life, if you're kind and you have great friends and the relationships that you have, you think about the friends you have from high school or university or your people that you go to church with. I mean, those relationships are more important to you than a material thing. Yet somehow in our society, we're getting directed at getting material things.
Mike, I really love your formula, for health and wellness. Watch your intake, exercise, get your rest, right? Get rest,
sleep,
and relationships. I mean, those are four powerful pieces, Mike. And if you can just kind of master those four pieces, I think you're really on your way to health and wellness.
I think so too.
And you're right. We undervalue those things and neglect those things, and they're really, really important, very, very significant. Mike, we've talked a lot about your public life, your limelight, your business. What about a personal level? Do you have any personal goals, anything that people may not know, that some personal things that you want to achieve for yourself in terms of hobbies, maybe family, things that you're pursuing personally outside of business and your public life?
Well, I think the pursuit I have is one day going back to where my mom and dad are from, possibly building some type of community structure, either a hospital or an orphanage, or something, going back home and having the ability to do that when the time is right and the setting is right. I mean, I'm blessed with wonderful people in my personal life. I mean, I mentioned a great partner. It just seems like everyone I've surrounded myself with, the universe has brought me great people, good people, people that are like-minded like myself. And at this point in my life, I don't like stress, or I don't like people I don't like being around, right? If I didn't like you, I wouldn't have done this interview. I mean, I thought you're a good guy. What you're asking about, you said Rob would come down here. I mean, I think as we age, we kind of know what we want.
Yeah.
We don't want to offend anyone. And your philosophy might not be aligned with other people, right? You know ourselves, our society is material, right? Everything you get on social media or whatever, it's here's my new outfit, here's my new car, here's my new boat, here's I'm on vacation. You know, all these things, right? I mean, those aren't the things that, the memories I have every day with my teammates when they call me, you know, it's 45 years, now it's the tournament. I'll always get a call from an old coach. You know, Mike, remember we did this, or Darwin will call me, or players will call me, right? I mean, those are the things you value. You don't value a nice car you're driving or a nice home you're in. Sure, you want those things, but we don't put enough of a premium on the people around us that really are significant to our life, right?
This is a great time to ask you this question, Mike. And you've perhaps answered it already a little bit. How would you define success? What does success mean for you? I mean, we talked about winning the national championship. You're a successful business guy. What does success mean for Mike Brkovich? You know, and when you look in the mirror, when you wake up in the morning, or you roll, you squeak out of bed, you're hurting back and knees. What does success mean for you?
That's a good, in-depth question. What is success to mean? To me, I guess it would start, and I go back to these guys I worked for. I mean, I watched them, and they always said to me, the hallmark of a good person, of a balanced person, of a human being that as he goes through life, how much can you give back? You're successful, but you're only going to be successful if you give back to your community. Now, it could be giving back in a number of ways. You could be creating employment for, let's say, a young man to come in here and get a job. We could be training him. We could be educating him so he could go on and be a productive human being in society. You could be linking yourself to charities where you think that's what our community needs. There's a mental health crisis in Windsor, as you know. I mean, how can I help in that arena? Look at our hospitals, right? I mean, my brother died of cancer, so I really want to support the Cancer Foundation. I want to support hospice. I saw how important it was to families when a loved one is dying to be comforted in that environment. I think success to me means how can you give back to the community in a way that's really going to help your community, help people. And it's funny, like these old guys, they would leave stuff in my mind, right, that I would remember. And one guy would say, have you ever seen a Brinks truck in a funeral procession, Mike? or give me the forwarding address after I go so I could send all my money there. I mean, you have to put a smile on people's faces. If you're an employer, you want to set up a good work environment for your employees to be in. If you are blessed enough to be financially successful, how are you going to give that back to your community or other places where you think someone's going to benefit? I think that's really success and serving people. I mean, if you live a life where you've not serviced or helped people, that's not a very meaningful life, is it? Even in your own, as a pharmacist, you're providing some relief to these people. You're helping them get through a crisis. You're helping them get through life, right? You were a police officer. When you show up at someone's home who's having a domestic dispute, I mean, you want to help people. How can we get them help, or a mental health issue when you pick someone up? That's what makes you feel good.
Yeah.
You know, living in a nice home with a big car, yeah, it will make you feel good, but only temporarily, right?
Yeah. Totally agree, Mike. A life of service.
A life of
really
service.
What success is all about.
It is.
If you just serve others and help enough people,
yeah,
you'll experience fulfillment.
I think so.
Absolutely.
Right? And you know what? I think the other thing is you don't need to be recognized for that.
Yeah.
People want to recognize people for all this stuff. That's how everyone should be like. So why should you be recognized for it? That's the way you've been brought up by your parents, right? It's a good way to be, I think.
That's great advice. You know, we came to serve, not to be served. Right? It's very simple to understand.
Couple more questions, Steve. We're getting close to 3 here.
Okay.
Gone by fast.
Yeah. It's almost 3 o'clock.
Yeah, I can't believe
2
that.
hours. You're
Really?
a talker, Mike. That's why.
Was I doing a lot of talking?
I heard you were a quiet guy, but I don't think
I am quiet. But he told me I had to add to the story, so I was thinking all these questions.
You've done well. Mike, first of all, I want to commend you for your goal and your aspiration to build a hospital or something important in Serbia, and God willing, you achieve that goal. I want to ask you, what legacy do you want to leave behind? And secondly, what's your vision and life purpose for the future?
Give me that
Loaded
question again.
What legacy do you want to leave behind? What do you want to be remembered for in life? And also, second part of it is, what's your vision and for your purpose in the future?
Well, I mean, the legacy I want to leave, I think I just went over them. Humility, kindness, getting over oneself, helping your community.
So it's not about the stuff that you've done that you want to be remembered for, like the Walkerville Brewery and the real estate and all these things.
No, all those preserving buildings and getting the help, getting these awards from the city for preserving a building or saving a building.
So you want to be remembered for spiritual gifts.
Yeah, I think so.
Spiritual treasures.
Yeah.
That's what you're saying.
Yeah, I think so. I feel good when someone says, I worked for you 10 years, Mike, and it was great. I got a good foundation. I got a better job. I get such a great feeling when we train someone here, brewers here, and they get a job in Toronto where their career is advancing, right? That's what makes you feel good, isn't it? That's what you kind of want to see.
Yeah. So what's your vision and life purpose for the future? You just turned
if
66 yesterday.
If God grants me some years, I plan on helping my community, giving back where I can, trying to create a successful company that's going to employ more people, create some condominiums to alleviate our housing crisis.
We need that.
We need that. I mean, all of those things, I think.
That's fantastic, Mike.
Mike, before today, I didn't really know you, but I must say that I was impressed with your basketball career, but I'm even more impressed with Mike Brkovich, the person.
Well, thank you.
And I really want to, I sincerely mean that. I wasn't sure what I was going to hear today, but what I heard, I'm really impressed by. Even more impressive is the person in your basketball
Well, thank you
career.
for saying it, and
Yeah.
I really do mean. I think humility and kindness those are great hallmarks to have instilled in you over the course of your life.
Yeah, Mike. As we wrap up here, you've obviously learned a lot. You 63 years of life.
66.
66. I'm getting to 63.
You're going to be 60. Yeah, that's right.
You look so young, Mike. I'm bringing your age down. But as you reflect and everything we shared today and what you've experienced up to this point in your life, as we wrap up, what are kind of 3 things, 3 nuggets of pearls of wisdom that you could leave with our audience, people listening, to say, hey, if I can lock into these 3 things, maybe I'll have a chance to be successful like Mike Brkovich and Steve Gavrilos and Rob Sanders.
Oh yeah, that's what young people ask me. Young people see you a certain way.
Yes.
Where I don't see myself the same way they see me, right? So when I ask them, okay, how do you see me? Let me break this down to me so I understand what you're seeing that I'm. And so all of them see material success, young people.
Yes.
So the first thing I tell everyone, life is not a sprint, it's a marathon. And if you're going to be successful, that's going to take 30 years. You're not going to achieve success in 1, 2, or 3, or 4 years. These are 10-year increments. And you're going to need to find things that you are passionate about and that you want to spend the rest of your life doing. Almost if you'd have to do it for free, you would do it, right? So I think what we missed today is, again, I've said this word 1,000 times, it's humility, it's kindness, it's integrity, it's what can I do for you if you're having a tough time? Because I've got it pretty good, right? Got hot water, electricity, food in my fridge. That's
right.
Right, got gas in my tank. I'm going to get on CPP soon. So, I mean, I think too much of our younger generation focuses on the wrong things. And they want immediate results. And they don't see this as a 40-year window. Just take your time, and at the end of it, you're going to be okay if you do all the right things. That's the advice I give to a lot of people. I mean, they don't want to hear it. They think, oh, how can I make a lot of money? I mean, take your time.
Yeah.
Right? That's what you
Good
tell them.
advice. Good advice.
So, Mike, I know Steve's going to have the closing remarks here, but I just want to acknowledge you, Mike, for just taking the time to share your story with us. A lot of what you shared today has never been heard before.
Yeah.
And I'll finish the way I started. I believe what you shared today, somebody's going to hear it, and it's going to transform their life. And I just want to acknowledge you for just sharing your story and putting that out there in the world. And I really appreciate what you're doing here. You know, you're giving back to the community. You're really developing people. You're not just looking for Mike Brkovich and what you can get, but you're giving back from what you have gotten.
What's in it for me?
You mentioned how you've been blessed.
I am.
And you've been fortunate. You've been lucky. You mentioned all those things, and you recognize that. And because you recognize that, you're creating opportunities for other people, and that's so amazing. I just want to just acknowledge you for that.
Well, listen, there isn't a day goes by that I don't wake up, especially after I've lost a lot of people in my life, that I don't say I'm living a dream. Boy, I grew up in a poor neighborhood with ethnic parents. I played on a national champion. I won some city championships. I got to meet great people after I got out of university that guided me down the right path. Look how business-wise, I own all these properties and businesses. I employ all these people. I mean, I really have, this is an amazing story when you think about it, because I didn't come from wealthy parents. I didn't come from a background where my parents were educated. I mean, all those things, you have to thank all these people that have been in my life.
First of all, I want to thank you, Rob, for co-hosting the Untold Story today. Thank you so much. And Mike, we want to thank you so much for being our guest today, our first guest on the Untold Story Podcast. And I just want to close off by saying that all the advice that you gave, besides your miraculous and magical story, your athletic story, all the life advice that you gave, I think is so important for the viewers. And I want to thank you so much. I wish you every blessing in life, in your future, and may you accomplish all your dreams and visions and goals.
Well, thank you so much. I really love sharing these few hours with you two. And again, we're all blessed, right? That we could sit here and talk about these experiences and enjoy one another, for sure.
Yeah, this was fun.
This was fun, yeah.
It was fun.
We all have a similar feeling. Every time when we wake up, we all feel the same way.
Oh, yeah.
You know, that we think we're alive, thankful we're alive.
Thankful,
you know?
for sure.